Guys, welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. I want to thank Randy Johnson of High Desert Wild Sheep Guides from Utah for coming on and spending time with us and sharing his expertise. He's going to be breaking down the Utah sheep and goat units. He's going to talk about the ins and outs of each one of those units and which ones to apply for. I want to remind you guys that the draw for Utah can be done online, and it is due by March 2nd. That's coming up here this week, so make sure you don't forget to go online and apply. And I just want to thank you guys for your loyal support of my podcast. I want to thank you guys for all the positive feedback and messages and things that I get on my email and on my Instagram direct messaging and through my Facebook page. Without your support, this podcast wouldn't be possible. I also want to thank my four sponsors, GoHunt.com Insider. They make the best drawing resource and harvest guide statistics. And if you're not a member, you need to go join GoHunt.com Insider. Use the JScott promo code and you'll get a $50 KUIU gift card. I also want to thank Jason Hairston over at KUIU for stepping up and sponsoring my podcast. I'm excited to announce that we're going to have some great promotional things going on with KUIU, and I want to thank Jason and his staff for supporting my podcast. Also like to thank Phoneskope.com, Cheston Davis over in Beaver, Utah. Phoneskope makes the best digiscoping adapters on the market. They can take any binocular, any spotting scope and adapt it to any phone, and you can be taking great photos and videos right away. I want to thank Cheston for his support. You can use the JScott16 promo code and get a 10% discount. Also, Cody Nelson and the crew over at the Outdoorsmans in Phoenix, the Optics Authority. If you use the JScott promo code, you get 10% off over there with Cody and his guys. So, guys, thanks for your support. Let's get right into it, and don't forget to apply in Utah. Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today I have Randy Johnson of High Desert Wild Sheep Guides out of Utah. Randy's been on the podcast before, and guys really liked having him on, and I've had a lot of people ask for you to be back on again. Randy, how you doing?
I appreciate that. I'm doing great. I had a long hike today. I got away from all the noise and everything that's hectic in society, and so it's nice when you can clear your mind.
You know, I follow you on Instagram, and you do a great job at it seems going to all the shows and you know, being a professional in the industry that you're in and taking care of business, but you also spend a ton of time getting away and hiking and just getting out there and whether it's, you know, looking for sheep, looking for goats, looking for big shed horns off a deer, or just out hiking and using gear. And that's something that I always admire about you. How was your show season?
Well, you know, when I go to shows, I don't necessarily set up a booth. I go to see old friends, to see new gear, just to renew acquaintances and to see what's going on in the hunting industry. And the shows were fantastic this year. It seems like the quality and the number of vendors in all of the shows just continues to increase, and it's fun. Hectic, but very fun.
For sure. And Randy, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself? And I believe you're from Marysville, Utah. Explain to them where that is and just give a background in case they didn't catch your podcast from before.
Well, Marysville is one of those giant cities that you come across in southern Utah that's maybe got 500 to 600 people in. You can tell I was being a little facetious with that comment, but it's a wonderful place. I grew up here. The only time that I've lived away from this small town is when I was going to college. It's a quiet area. It's in a great part of the state, as I'm very close to all of the national parks, but I also have the Tusher Mountains are right in my backyard. I can throw a backpack on and go look at goats, bucks, billies, and I'm not too far away from getting into sheep country also. And so I've been in the guiding business for almost 30 years now. And to be honest, I've never done it to earn a living. It's just always been something I love. It's my passion. I love meeting people. I love the experiences and the friendships that are established through guiding. And I just believe in this business, if we'll work hard and if we'll give individuals 150% of our effort and do it with honesty and integrity, that we're doing our jobs.
Yeah, for sure. And you have an outstanding reputation across the board in the guiding industry. But I believe you were a education administrator for many, many years before, well, not before, but quote unquote in your real job, correct?
Well, I actually did spend 40 years in the educational field, everything from teaching, coaching, to being a principal, and then I finished my career as superintendent of schools. I enjoyed the relationships, the opportunity to work with kids and parents, and early on in my career when I was in college, I was actually a collegiate baseball player, and kind of funny, my name's Randy Johnson, and so people say, they compare me, to the big unit who was about 6'11" and threw a fastball about 100, but I could throw a fastball in the 90s, so I had some good times. I just didn't go quite as far as he did.
Yeah, being from Arizona, obviously Randy Johnson, the big unit, is pretty near and dear to a lot of our hearts, and in the World Series run and all of that they made, and he's sure a legend around here for sure. But you're a legend in the guiding industry as well, being in it for 30 years, and you're just known as an all-around great guy that brings a lot of integrity to the game. And one question I would ask you before we're going to get into talking about Utah sheep and goats and some other things is, it seems, well, how do you see with social media, how do you see some of the guiding industry and the hunting industry in itself? What things would you give advice to, say, the younger guy to watch out for this and watch out for that, and maybe some things that you're seeing going on, and I'm assuming that you see something going on that maybe you're a little leery of, maybe not. I'm kind of throwing this question out as a curveball, but what advice could you give to other guides and other hunters out there in relationship to social media and how things are being portrayed in our industry?
Well, there's no doubt that social media has changed the entire ball game, not only with what we do in the guiding hunting industry, but politics, et cetera, et cetera. There are a lot of great things about social media, and then there are some negatives also. I think, if you're going to get into social media, you need to do it for the right reasons. You need to be positive. I guess the only reason that I use social media, to be honest, is I'm using it to try and pay back to hunting what I feel hunting has given to me over all the years. And so when I post, I use those opportunities to try and teach the younger guides, hunters, outfitters who are out there, because as you look at social media, you can just be overwhelmed with all of the posts, and many of those people are just outstanding individuals. But again, just like in all aspects of society, there will be those that you better do your research if you're going to for instance, book with someone who you see a lot of, who is posting and using social media, do your research before you go with them. Make sure that their claims, their pictures are hers, etc. I've actually been told that there are some within our guiding outfitting fraternity who buy pictures from other people out there, and then they post them on social media to make it look like they're taking those kind of trophy animals. Now, I don't know whether that's fact or fiction, Jay, but that's what I've been told, and I would say that's the dark side of hunting. But if I had to counsel our young outfitters and hunters, I recently had the opportunity to do a interview for KUIU, and I thought KUIU asked some really great questions that made me think. And I remember they did ask, what kind of advice would you give to younger guides, etc. And I would just say, I remember saying, be human vacuum cleaners. Learn everything you can, and don't be afraid to work. Work your butt off, and don't be afraid to fail, because along the way you're going to fail some. But pick out individuals, guides in the hunting industry who are well respected, and ask them questions and learn from them. And don't always trust everyone out there who says they want to be your friend, because they will use you to a certain point, and you can get burnt that way. I know I've learned that tough lesson many times, but you do have to trust people until they break that trust. Those are just a few thoughts that I have, Jay.
Yeah, that's good stuff. That comes from a lot of experience there, so I appreciate that. Randy, I wanted to have you on to talk to you about the Utah application, big game application season is here, and I believe the applications are due here on March the 2nd, and you do a lot of sheep hunting and a lot of goat hunting, and I wanted to talk to you about breaking down the sheep units and the goat units, and talk a little bit about the units, talk about the quality of animals, and give you a chance to talk about the trend that you see with each of those animals. Are we trending up as far as numbers? Are we trending up or down as far as quality of trophies, etc.? And you're the perfect guy to have on to discuss Utah sheep and goats. Let's probably go ahead and just start with sheep and break down Utah sheep hunting, both desert and rocky, if you will, and give us your overall breakdown of the sheep hunting in Utah.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Sheep in Utah, we're not going to have the quality that our genetics that in Arizona or Nevada would have, or even in New Mexico, and yet we have some incredible sheep opportunities here in Utah for non-residents. There aren't very many of them, because last year there was only 3 tags. However, this year it appears, and we don't know for sure, that they're going to raise that to 4 non-resident tags. When you have 8,000 plus non-resident applicants applying for only 4 tags, the chances of you drawing aren't very good, but it can happen. And if you do draw, I guarantee that Utah can offer an incredible experience out in the field. You may not, again, get a Boone and Crockett ram, but you're going to have an incredible experience. And if I'm talking about Utah desert sheep, there's 4 units that I really like. What's called the Caparalis East and Escalante. It's those two units are subunits of the Kaparowitz, but they will be combined into one tag this year for a non-resident hunter. The Kaparowitz East and the Escalante, they're tough areas of our state. There are places in those units that you can throw a backpack on, and you may not get back to your truck for 10 days, depending on if you find your ram or not. Quality of sheep, you can take a ram in the Kaparowitz East or Escalante that would range in a score from 150 clear up to 170. However, there aren't as many rams on the upper part as far as score. I love that particular unit as it is huge and just offers someone who really wants to experience sheep hunting at its very best a great opportunity. The next unit would be your Kaparowitz West. The Kaparowitz West, there are a lot of sheep on that unit. Again, the score would range in that unit probably from 155. You might hit 170. I've had several hunters get rams that were close to that score on the West. It's a little bit easier unit than the Kaparowitz East or the Escalante because there are a lot of old roads in there. You can ride your ATVs, do a lot of glassing, and then you've got to be willing to drop off into some big canyons to go after your ram when you find it. Outstanding unit with some really good genetics from some transplants that came out of Nevada. Probably the unit that lots of people think is the best unit in Utah would be what we call a Zion unit because of Arizona genetics that were infused many years ago into that area. It's one of the more different desert sheep units than you would ever see because it has lots of ponderosas. You would look at it and think it was designed more for Rocky Mountain sheep, but it's incredibly beautiful. It is in close proximity to Zion National Park, so you better know your boundary lines and be very careful with that. Quality, from 160 to 170, and there have been rams taken off that unit bigger than 170. Many people think that there are 170 rams running all over the place on this unit, but that is not the case. You're going to have to work really hard to find one that will hit 170. There are a lot of rams in the 160 class. If you were to put in on that unit and draw, the one downfall that I see is you're probably going to bump into a lot more hunters. There are more tags on that unit, and it seems like when someone hunts the Zion, they bring a lot of friends and relatives with them. And so if you're looking for an experience where you're not going to see other hunters, the Zion won't offer that kind of experience like the Kaparowitz East or Escalante or even the West would. But it is a great unit with great trophy potential for Utah at least. Then the fourth unit that a non-resident could apply for in Utah is called the South San Rafael or North. On that particular unit, the genetics are true Utah genetics. Sometimes I call those pygmy genetics. The rams are beautiful. They're beautiful. They have quite a flair to them, but the bases aren't, they're never going to hit 14. You're not going to get a lot of length, and so your scores are going to generally be mid-40s. You can find some old, beautiful rams in there. I happen to have a hunter from Idaho in there last year, and we just got away from the old mining roads, and we took off into some incredible scenery, gnarly canyons. We saw a lot of sheep, and he ended up taking a nice ram. We did see an older ram, too, that might even have hit 155 that we didn't get a shot at. But the South San Rafael, the odds might be a little better for a non-resident of drawing that one, because most non-residents were put in for those first 3 units that I mentioned. But as far as points go on these desert sheep units, Jay, having max points really doesn't seem to have been helping non-residents at all. For instance, last year, those who drew the 3 tags last year had 11, 7, and 1 point. Whoever the gentleman was or the gal who drew with 1 point, boy, they beat the odds. They should have been in Vegas that particular day.
So in other words, what you're saying is the listeners out there, don't be discouraged that you don't have max. What you're actually saying, Randy, is that what'd you say, 1, 7, and 4?
Yes, 11, 7, and 4, 11, 7, and 1 point last year. Someone drew a tag last year, had only put in for the first time.
Oh my goodness. So as a non-resident, you think you've got no shot, but you actually, with what you just said, you actually absolutely need to be applying, because you never know when it's going to be your time.
Absolutely. With sheep in Utah, don't be discouraged if you don't have max points. People are drawing with a lot less than max points on the sheep. It just depends on whether you're lucky, and the only way you're going to find out is, throw your name in the hat. It's not that expensive to apply.
For sure. Now let's talk about residents of Utah that'll be listening to this podcast. How do your picks or breaking down the units, if you were to take the top 4 or 5 units as a resident, what other units would you add in there for their opportunities?
I would not add any more units than these 4. There are some other units. I wouldn't really consider them to be quality units. There are 2 other units that I would throw into this mix, I guess, that someone should look at. One is the Dirty Devil unit. It can be an incredible experience. Incredible canyons. It can really make you bust your butt to get in there. Last year, we actually took a ram off the Dirty Devil that was 12 years old, scored close to 160. It's had some problems with disease, but if someone really wants a quality experience, that's one a resident, if they could draw. I love the unit. And the other one we call the Little Rockies. It may even be listed as the Henry Mountains on the proclamation. There's some areas in there that you can get off the beaten path and find a very nice ram in that 155 up to 165 caliber with some luck.
Okay. And the sheep, are those sheep Nelsoni?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, they are.
Okay. And how long have sheep tags been available in the state of Utah? Desert sheep.
Boy, that goes back a long ways. I believe some of the original transplants, Jay, in Utah were as far back as 1978, and they probably started issuing a few tags in the late 80s. I'd have to research that, but I would guess there were a few tags issued at that time. And Utah, the number of tags, it had been increasing every year for a long time. And then we did have a few units that got some disease, had some problems with predators, and they had to reduce tags. But we're still holding around 35 to 40 tags each year, and for Utah, that's doing quite well.
What do you think about the Pine Valley unit?
Oh, I missed that. Darn, I appreciate you reminding me on that. Pine Valley is a great unit. I can't believe that I missed that one. maybe I didn't mention that because I'm holding out so that some of my friends can draw that. you know how odds get skewed. But no, I just forgot to mention that. Pine Valley is a great unit because it has your Arizona genetics that come across from 13A, I think it is, 13A, 13B.
Yeah, 13B.
They also transplanted some sheep out of the Zion 2 or 3 years ago into an area of Pine Valley, and those sheep will be getting to the point where they're trophy caliber. If someone can draw that, it's tough to draw that unit, but if someone can draw it, there's some real potential to take a possible 170 caliber ram. I had a resident hunter 2 years ago, took a 168, just a beautiful sheep for Utah in that unit, and it's a fairly easy unit in many ways to hunt. You can drive back into St. George instead of Motel if you chose to, but I would rather stay out on the mountain.
For sure. Out of all these, they're available to residents and non-residents. Out of all the units, which one would you say is probably the worst for numbers of sheep, worst for quality, and just kind of the dog unit of the whole state? I know you probably have so much respect for the animals you don't even want to say that, but of all the units, which one or two are the kind of the worst of the worst?
Your North San Rafael still hasn't recovered from some disease that it had. It's still struggling, and your San Juan units have been struggling a little. Again, they had some disease down there. They've been putting some transplants in, hoping to get that unit back up, because at one time it was producing some really good rams. I'd be careful about the North. I would be careful with the San Juan, although you can still take a good ram down there. Another unit would be the Potash. Potash has quite a few sheep in it, but the quality in that area generally isn't as good as the other units.
Okay. One thing I look forward to getting from you is I'm on your newsletter. You send out kind of an email to you have a group of friends and clients and acquaintances, and it's always great to get your email, breaking down the hunts that you've just been on. And one of the things that I like about it is you can really tell that you're into it way more for the experience and the relationship. Not like shooting a trophy and the size of a trophy isn't of utmost importance, but it's clear and evident in those emails that I get how important the story is, how important the relationship is with the hunter, and it seems like there's always some sort of backstory of maybe someone shooting an animal with their relatives passed down rifle, or just something where there's more to it than just a trophy photo. And I think that speaks a lot to the kind of guy you are. And how long have you been doing that email? I don't know what you would call it. I guess it's a email highlight that you send out. I
just call it my personal hunter's listserv, and I've probably been doing that now for 15 years. I just started sending out pictures and stories to friends because they wanted to know what I was doing and what was going on, and I kept getting requests from people from actually all over the U.S. and the world to be included on that. And so there are many individuals I don't even know who have requested to have their email added. And I use it to share stories. I'll have a father, say, in Southern California, whose son just went on his first, let's say, wild boar hunt and took his first animal, and he sends me a picture, and the young man or young lady is just so excited and smiling with a picture with their first animal. And I use it to try and promote our hunting heritage and stress the importance of passing that hunting heritage on to our youth. And I also use it as an opportunity to try and teach ethics. All of us would like to take the biggest animal out there on the mountain. Points are important, but again, it's that experience with good friends and good people. And I share those stories. I talk some about getting physically prepared for a hunt, the mental aspects. I share a lot of personal thoughts when I feel it's appropriate to try and teach. And I've enjoyed doing it. A lot of people have encouraged me to turn it into a blog, et cetera, where I would make a little money off of it, but I never started it for that. I started it to pay back to hunting and to share with other huntings what hunting has given me, and that's what I use it for. And so I appreciate the fact that people out there have enjoyed what I do with it. I don't post something every day or every week, but when appropriate, when someone shares a story with me and they do want a picture of their trophy animal shared, and they say it's okay to do it, then I will share and talk about that experience in this on my Hunters Listserv.
Yeah, you do a great job with that for sure. I look forward to getting it every time I see your name on my email. It makes me smile. Randy, let's talk about Rocky Mountain Bighorns, and I guess first the non-resident opportunities. Although they're slim, let's talk about the units for non-residents in Utah for Rockies.
Well, sure, and again with Rockies, the draw tags are it's tough. There were almost 8,000 non-resident applicants last year for 3 tags, and there are 3 units that non-residents can apply for. This year, they've changed the name of one of them to the 9 Mile Range Creek or Gray Canyon unit. Rams on that unit range from 160 to 170. However, there have been some rams in the past taken off that unit that scored above 180, and every once in a while you'll get some rams that will hit the mid-70s. So there is some good trophy potential. I also think on that particular unit, if a non-resident wants to get off the beaten path, they might find that ram that's going to break the 170 mark.
Randy, this is let me double check my work here real fast.
You bet.
I am looking at the GoHunt Insider. GoHunt.com Insider is a sponsor of my podcast, and they have draw odds and where they tell the numbers of applications and tags drawn. And I'm looking at this 9 Mile Range Creek for non-residents. Believe it or not, in 2016, the only person that drew had 1 point. So there's 1 non-resident tag, and he had 1 bonus point.
That's amazing, and it just it reiterates what we were saying earlier. It does pay to throw your hat in the ring. It's not that expensive, and you could be one of those who luck out and draw.
And just to be clear, Randy, in Utah, you can apply for desert and you can apply for Rockies. Meaning in Arizona, you just apply for sheep and you can mix Rockies and desert. But in Utah, it is separate. So you can apply for desert and for Rockies both.
That's absolutely true. And so that's a very advantageous opportunity for a non-resident hunter.
Yeah, and this perfect example of, 9 Mile Range Creek is one of the best units for Rockies, and somebody drew with 1 bonus point. So, I mean, anybody out there that says, oh, it takes too many points, it's a points game, I mean, that just goes to show right there that, 1 bonus point, that's nothing. That's the guy's, he put in 1 year and didn't draw, so it gave him a bonus point. So literally the second year he put in, he drew, or she.
Exactly, and I think that's great.
And now that 9 Mile Range Creek, from what I understand, used to be the best unit in the state, but I hear that maybe it's kind of fallen back a little bit, and it's not the clear best unit in the state.
I still think it's the best unit in the state. That's my personal opinion. It's had a few issues. They're still trying to figure out what that is, but I had friends in there this last year who had a great experience and took some big rams. I think the Book Cliff South, which is the second unit available for non-residents, has fallen a little more than 9 Mile Range Creek. At least that's my personal opinion. And the South Book Cliffs unit is still an excellent unit, with sheep again ranging from 160 to 170, but you can find rams in there that could hit your mid-70s or better, especially if you want to get off the beaten path. I happen to have a hunter in there last year. He was from back east, and he had a few health problems. He was 72 years old, but his sons came to help him, and we got off the beaten path, and he got a really nice ram in the mid-60s. It's a fun unit, and as a non-resident, I wouldn't hesitate to put in on there. The third unit, Jay, they could put in on is called the Box Elder or Newfoundland Mountains. And on that particular unit, the sheep are California Bighorns. A lot of them were transplanted from Antelope Island in northern Utah. Lots of sheep out there. Again, quality 150 to 60. The mountain range itself is not very big. You're going to see a lot of sheep if you happen to draw that tag.
And then, so that's the 3 units that non-residents can apply for. How about for residents?
Okay, residents on the 9 Mile Range Creek Great Canyon, they split that unit this year, and the northern part of it they now call Jack Creek. I think the odds on Jack Creek are going to be a little bit better for residents of drawing than actually on Great Canyon, and that's because some of the old oil roads that went out onto the Big Rim towards Jack Creek have been closed down. So access into that area is much tougher, and that scares some of the hunters away because it can be a very physical hunt. If they don't go in that way, then they're going to have to float the Colorado River. That's another way to hunt that area. But it has some great trophy potential on that northern part of the unit. A new unit they opened last year is called I believe it's the Ivanaquin for residents. And I know that quite a really nice ram was taken on there last year. I think it was maybe 172, 173, maybe 75. And so that's a possibility for residents also.
And when you're looking at sheep hunting for Rockies in Utah, it looks like most of the seasons run from November 1st through the 30th, with the exception of that 9 Mile, the Range Creek they split up. In your opinion, would you see more rutting activity the second half of the season or the first half, Randy?
You'd see more rutting activity the second half of the season, but I've been in there the 1st of November, and they have just been rutting like crazy, but it seems like more and more sheep from the high country filter down into that Range Creek as you go on later into November. But it's not going to be a bad hunt whether you start the first part of the hunt or the last part of the hunt.
Yeah. Out of those units that the residents can apply for, which would you say that, a couple that are really, really tough units, kind of like you did with the desert?
Boy, that's another tough question. All of those units you're going to get rams in. I don't think any of them are just poor units that you're not going to have a great experience. So I really wouldn't say that there's one of those units that's any worse than the other. They're all good, solid units.
Okay, fair enough. Now, do you typically do more rocky hunts in Utah or more desert hunts on your own personal, guiding?
We generally would do more desert hunts. The rocky hunts, it seems like, because of the terrain, more of your resident hunters feel like they can do those self-guided, which, we have to appreciate that. And they have friends that can go with them. And so as a general rule, we do more desert hunts, but it's always a privilege and a fun opportunity to get to do a couple of rocky hunts on any of those units when the opportunity does come up.
Okay, Randy, let's talk about goats, Rocky Mountain goats. I know they're one of your favorites. I love seeing your pictures on Instagram, and I thought I would tell you, I don't know if I did, Dara and I applied in Alaska for mountain goat, and we drew. And so we're going this, I guess, third week in August this year coming up. So we're stoked. Neither one of us can even spell mountain goat, so we're pretty excited to go on a new adventure.
Well, I'll bet both you learn how to spell mountain goat for sure, and you are going to have an incredible adventure, an incredible experience, and you're going to take a couple of great trophies. I guarantee it up there. And as I always tell hunters, and you know this also, Jay, when you get your trophy billy down, there's only one way to go, and that's with a full body mount to do goats justice. I know they're expensive, but they just look incredible. And my grandkids, when they come to visit, they'll go up into my trophy room and they'll look at that full body goat up there on the wall, staring down at them, and it always is a conversation item for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're excited. I'm kind of trying to learn as much as I can. Interesting, I had Peter Munich from the Rocky Mountain Goat Alliance on the podcast last year, and I actually they do a 3-year membership deal, and I signed up for 3 years, and it's funny, the very next year I draw the goat tag, and so I'm trying to learn everything that I can about them, and they're a really neat animal. I can't wait to I've been around a few goats, just hiking around in Colorado and fly fishing some of these high mountain lakes, but my experience level is very, very slim. So let's talk about your favorite units for goat in Utah.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's fun to visit about mountain goats in Utah. A great state for mountain goats, and for non-residents. As I looked at the proclamation, it looks like there will be 8 non-resident tags this year for billies, plus a new tag for one nanny, and nannies can grow some pretty tall horns also. But my favorite unit in the entire state is right in my backyard here on the Beaver. I call them the Tusher Mountains. It's an incredible unit. Has produced some Boone and Crockett billies. There's 2 non-resident tags, and that is they do have to hunt the early hunt, which is from September 9th to the 24th. And sometimes hunters believe that because the early hunt starts early in September, that the billies don't have as thick a pelage or hair at that time. But I can tell you that we've taken some big billies on that early hunt that are just beautiful and have haired up really well. Maybe not quite as thick as they would if you were going on the late hunt in October, but I had a young man who drew that tag from North Carolina last year. He only had 7 points, and he came out here and he was in great shape because he had been on a Dall sheep hunt in Alaska. But the altitude up there is just, it's a little thin when you're coming out here from somewhere like North Carolina, and he could feel it. He had a headache for a day or two at close to 12,000 feet. But the terrain on the Beaver is fairly moderate. I would say for mountain goat country, it's a little bit easier. There are places on that unit that if you get off the roads and beaten path, you can still find a trophy billy. For instance, his billy scored just under Boone and Crockett and had just a monster body. It had to weigh 300 and something pounds. So that unit's a special unit in my mind. Then other units non-residents can apply for would be in the high Uintas, and you have your high Uintas South Slope, your high Uintas Chalk Creek Camas, the high Uintas North and South Slope, and each one of those offers one non-resident tag. And I really believe that the high Uintas offer an incredible experience for a non-resident hunter who wants to get off the beaten path. We had a hunter from California year before last. Actually, he had bought an auction tag, but we got off of some of those roads and he ended up taking a Boone and Crockett billy. And so they claim that the biggest billies usually come off your Beaver and Willard Peak. But I can tell you, if you get off the beaten path in the Uintas, you can find some beautiful big goats. And so non-residents, there's one tag each on one of those units. And then Willard Peak Ogden is a great unit. It's probably not as tough as the high Uintas. It's similar to the Beaver unit. And there are 2 non-resident tags on Willard Peak. A great opportunity for a non-resident. And that's on the early hunt, Jay, and it looks like there's also one late tag for a non-resident this year.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now. Yeah, I see that.
And there's one late nanny tag on that unit this year. So Willard Peak offers a few more tags for non-residents who choose to apply there. And I noticed that if they had 17 points on that unit, if a non-resident, that the success rate was 100%, that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now. It looks like 17 points. There was one guy that applied and one guy drew, and then the other tag fell to a guy with 7 points at talking about non-residents. Willard Peak, isn't it kind of, if you just ask people what the best unit in Utah, it seems like forever Willard Peak was the number one answer. But you would say you might argue with that a little bit?
Oh, yes, I would.
Yeah.
I still feel like the Beaver and high Uintas are every bit as good as Willard Peak. But Willard Peak's a great unit, don't get me wrong. And if I was a non-resident, I would look at the odds on all of those units and see where I might have the best chances of drawing. And that's why, not as a non-resident, they need to get onto the DWR website and go down through those draw odds and analyze and do the research. There's also a non-resident tag offered on the Box Elder Peak, Lone Peak Timpanogos unit. That's an early tag. Isn't known for the quality that perhaps the Beaver, Willard, or the Hyannis would, but it's still a great opportunity to take a really nice goat, and that's an early tag, it looks like.
Randy, there's an auction tag, and then there's conservation tags for goats. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of the price range that, the different auction tag and conservation permits and what they have trended and what they have sold for over the years?
It used to be those tags were selling in the low 20s, but the last few years it seems like all of the auction tags for goats, elk, deer have been going up. And this year, if I remember right, the auction tags for goats went from 28, maybe up as high as 34,000.
And each unit gives a specific conservation permit so that you could hunt the beaver. Isn't there one conservation permit for the beaver? And then for each of the units, there's a conservation tag, and then there's an auction tag where that guy can hunt all of the units, correct?
Exactly. So our mountain goat population is doing very well for the DWR to be able to also offer those other conservation and auction tags. And so there's some great opportunities for hunters who may have been dreaming to go mountain goat hunting, and they put a little money away, and if they were bidding on at the right auction and the price was right, maybe they could purchase one of those tags and have a great experience that way.
I'm probably going to do another podcast with you specifically to mountain goats as I get closer and preparing the summer for my hunt, and we can talk to you more about it. But a general rule of thumb, kind of give me an elementary general rule of thumb of when you're looking at a billy, how to determine if it's a billy of quality, of what do you look for in a quality billy?
Well, I'll tell you, goats can be tough, and you better have your spot scope and get a good close, long look at them. But your billies are going to have a bigger, more of a blocky body than the nannies, and generally speaking, if it's not during the rut, and generally goats rut in November, at least here in Utah, so that's not a problem during your hunting season. But a lot of times your big billies are going to be off alone. Your nannies and your kids are going to stay together in bigger groups, but your billies will get off by themselves a lot of times, especially your big old loner billies. And I have seen billies in groups of 5, 6, 7, but they'll generally also have quite a dirty butt patch, Jay. And of course, they have a big scent gland that if you're close enough and you get the right angle, right behind the horn, there'll be a big, dark, very prominent scent gland that you can see. Those are some of the things that I look at for billies, and I wouldn't say I'm an expert like probably some of the guides in Alaska who chase billies all the time, but that's what I look for.
And I've heard guys say too, you watch for them to take a leak and see kind of how they do it, and you can tell if it's a billy or a nanny. Is that another good thing?
Exactly. The billies will stretch out instead of squat. That's another characteristic that you should look for. So that's a good point also.
And normally, mountain goats are higher than sheep. They're like at the highest of highs, correct? But it's funny. I know some billies, some goats on the beaver. They can be down in the trees as well. I mean, low.
Well, that's interesting. You'd bring that up. I found a huge billy last year that was at an elevation of 6,000 feet, and that was the billy we were going to take. and then he disappeared on me just before the season, and I still don't know where he went, but he was in low country, and it had to be hot and miserable for that big old guy with the heat of the summer, and as his hair started to grow and get thicker. But I was amazed that he was in that. It was in some really rough cliffs, but it was low down. So on this particular unit, you can find them from 12,000 feet clear down to 6,000 feet.
Yeah, and historically, mountain goats, are the mountain goats in Utah fairly docile do you ever run into them where they're really spooky, or are they pretty docile to hunt?
I wouldn't say they're tame. I would say a unit like the Wasatch Mountains, where there are lots and lots of hikers, the goats up there can be quite docile. The goats on the Beaver, there are a lot of goats. It's a big population. They'll see a lot of ATVs. They can be what I would call dumb at times, but those big old billies that get off by themselves, they're always looking for danger, and they can be a little tough making a stalk on.
That's good stuff. There's a lot of information right there in what you just went over with the sheep and the goats, and I appreciate that. I know you love testing gear, and I believe you have a website, ireviewgear.com. And I wanted to ask you about, I see I read that article on KUIU.com, and I know you wear KUIU. What pieces of gear do you really like that KUIU makes?
Well, here's some of the items that I really like, and I just think KUIU is one of the quality companies, outdoor hunting companies out there today, and they've just taken it to another level with their research, and it seems like Jason and his team are just always looking for cutting edge materials, etc., which I really appreciate for mountain hunters. If we can go lighter, we can go further, and we can go longer. That's how I feel. But in my backpack, Jay, there's a couple of items from KUIU that I never take out. And one of those items would either be the Super Down jacket or the Kenai synthetic jacket. Both of them are just so light and they are so warm. They're very easy to pack because they compress so small, and I'll have one of those jackets in my backpack at all times, along with the KUIU Ultra NX rain gear. That rain gear, again, is very light. It does a great job. And so if I have it in my backpack, I don't have to worry about getting out there somewhere and a freak thunderstorm comes over. I can hurry and get that light rain gear, that NX rain gear out and put it on. So those items always stay in my backpack along with one of the Peloton beanies in case I get stuck out there and have to spend the night. The other items that I really like, I always wear a T-shirt, and I'll either wear the Peloton synthetic or the Merino crew T-shirt. And I do a lot of tough hiking, and so after I've hiked for an hour or two on a hunt, your T-shirt is usually quite saturated with sweat, and it's wet, and there's nothing more miserable than to sit down to glass and you've got a wet T-shirt on. And so I'll just pull those T-shirts off and slip my Super Down or Kenai synthetic jacket on when I'm glassing and hang the T-shirt up or the long sleeve Peloton or a merino wool shirt on a tree and let it dry, and I've got that Super Down or Kenai jacket on, and I'm warm. Something I will do in hot weather that may be a little different than some hunters is I like the merino zip-off bottoms that KUIU came out with. And so in hot weather, if it's really early in the morning and it's still a little chilly, I'll put those zip-off long johns, basically is what they are, on underneath a pair of hiking shorts. Really comfortable. It doesn't bind you in any way, and so you're protecting your legs from thrashing through the brush, etc. And so in warmer weather, I'll hike with those on. And then if it gets really hot, I'll take those off and just wear shorts. But the other item I'll wear quite a lot in hot weather is the Tiburon pant.
I love those pants.
Well, they're just outstanding. Outstanding.
They got the four-way stretch, and the air blows through them. They're with the vent on the sides. They're fantastic.
You just can't beat those pants for hunting in Arizona or say down in Sonora. And if I'm in the cactus, etc., I'll put a pair of the gaiters on the bottom half of those pants to protect them from catching on cactus and cat claw and things like that. And they work really, really good. If it's colder weather, I like to wear KUIU's Alpine pant. And the Alpine has the knee pad in. Some people might think that the knee pad is going to bind their knees, but it doesn't in these KUIU pants. And I'm always on my knees glassing or crawling in on a stalk, and those knee pads have saved my knees in that Alpine pant numerous times. They work well in cold weather. The other pant I use a lot in cold weather is the guide pant, just outstanding. For clothing, that is what I use most of that KUIU produces. I love all of it, but when we're talking about gear, I use the Icon Pro backpack, the 5200, most of the time, unless I'm on an extended backpack trip that'll take me in somewhere for 7 to 10 days, and then I'll go to the 7200 to give myself a little more room. But that 3,000 cubic inch Icon Pro is a tremendous backpack. If you're just going somewhere for a couple of days, it has enough room to even pack an animal out. And so that's one I'm looking closely at using on some of my shorter hunts. And the Mountain Star two-man tent, Jay, those guys hit a home run when they came out with that. You've got.
I love mine too. It's an awesome tent.
And I use that two-man for myself because it's light enough to pack and it gives you more room, and you have two entryways. One entryway you can cook or put your backpack under, and the other one you can use to exit. That tent's my very favorite. And then I use the 15-degree Super Down sleeping bag almost exclusively, whether I'm in warm or cold weather. And if I am in cold weather, and the 15 might not give me quite enough warmth, I'll just slip on Super Down pants that KUIU came out with and climb in the sleeping bag with those on and my Super Down jacket, and then I sleep warmer.
Yeah, for sure. One question I have is kind of bouncing back to preparing for this goat hunt, and how do you prepare your feet? What I've been told is going mountain goat hunting, walking in the rocks, that your feet are going to experience, even more than sheep hunting, are going to, get beat up. What would you give advice as far as preparing your feet for mountain goat hunting?
A couple of things that I do. From all the years that I've spent on the mountain backpacking, I've developed some neuromas in the balls of my feet, which is some scar tissue that presses on the nerve, and so my feet get a little tender anymore. But I always use a quality pair of insoles. I'll have a good pair of insoles made for me, almost orthotic insoles, because most shoe companies, it doesn't matter what boots you like, the one area that they shortchange is with the footbed. And so get a quality pair of insoles and then do some hiking with some good weight in your backpack in uneven, rocky terrain. There's nothing better to get your ankles and your feet accustomed to hiking in the kind of goat country you're going to be in than getting out. And I know where you live, you're in a lower elevation, but you still have some rough, miserable, volcanic rock down there in Arizona. And I guarantee if you're out with a heavy backpack in that country, your feet are going to get prepared.
Good stuff.
That's what I do.
Good stuff there, Randy. Man, I really appreciate you spending time with us. I just got a couple questions and then I'll let you go. I want to shift gears just a little bit and ask you about the deer seasons and the general deer and the limited entry deer. One mistake that I've made is I have been applying for limited entry. Years ago, you could only apply for elk or deer, and so I was applying for elk. And as soon as I was able to apply for both, I started applying for deer. But I've never applied for general season deer, not realizing that I couldn't use my limited entry deer points if I ever wanted to hunt a general deer unit. I understand that I should be applying for general deer and limited entry deer, and that non-residents can actually have better chance to draw these general deer hunts over residents, if I'm understanding this correctly. And in 1 or 2 years, you can pretty much draw as a non-resident, any general deer unit in Utah. I just get your thoughts on that.
And that's probably true. Most non-residents, they look at those limited entry and apply for those. And of course, your famous Henry Mountains and your Paunsaugunt, which are as good as it gets, your Fillmore, Oak Creek, San Juan, Elk Ridge, your West Desert Vernon, all of those would be considered trophy limited entry units. But if I was a non-resident, I would apply for the general season units in places, say, like a Beaver or maybe a Panguitch Lake, perhaps, a Pine Valley. I would have to look at which ones they can apply for, but there's some great units out there that are producing some pretty big bucks that non-residents should do the research on and look at for deer here in Utah.
But I mean, even if you're just wanting to get out and go deer hunting, I mean, it never really dawned on me that was an opportunity that I was missing. And, I feel like if it didn't dawn on me, that there's probably a lot of people out there that didn't realize that, some of these general units you can draw with virtually no points. And yeah, you're going to have, people and quite a few people around here and there, but I just think there's units, if you get off the beaten path, you can probably find a decent buck and get away from some people even with that.
Definitely, and Utah's deer population has really bounced back. Now, northern Utah, it may digress a little this year because they've just really been hit with some heavy snows. But southern Utah, we've had great moisture content in our higher elevations, and yet we haven't had deep snow down here in the valleys. So our deer are going to come through this winter really in good shape. And there are some opportunities to get off the beaten path on some of these general areas for non-residents where you could get a good, respectable buck, that might score 180 or even higher with some luck.
For sure. Randy, I want to put you one last question. I want to put you on the spot a little bit. Utah has conservation permits, and you've been doing this a long time. And there's, as an outsider, I'm from Arizona, so I'm not quote unquote involved in the fight, so to speak. But there's a whole group of people that live in Utah that are very, very anti conservation tags. And then there's a whole group of hunters that are, totally supportive and think the idea of conservation tags are a huge positive, or they believe that the benefits far outweigh the negative. From an outsider getting to hunt the beaver unit last year for elk and getting to see the quality of hunting that you guys have there and the habitat work, and I know there's two sides to the spectrum, but I'm just curious where you see the positives of conservation tags that maybe people, I mean, where is the beef? Is the beef the fact that maybe there's not 100% transparency where all of the money goes? Or I just don't quite understand it if it's not taking tags out of the general populace, and it's adding millions of dollars that the wildlife officials and some of these nonprofit groups can use to make wildlife and make our hunting better. I just don't, I guess I don't understand it. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, in hunting, it seems like there are politics in hunting also. You always have two sides on all the issues, and as long as we have a healthy population of animals, which right now Utah is doing very well, I'm totally supportive of the conservation tags because of the money that it generates that is going back into increasing our herds, whether that be desert sheep or deer or elk. And as long as there is transparency by our division and by the governor and other politicians and other hunting groups of where that money and how it's being used, and I've seen that transparency in the past, and I've liked how that money is being spent, and I think it has made a great difference in the quality of big game populations here in this state. I think sometimes hunters on the other side feel like those conservation tags are only going to those who have the most money. And in a lot of instances, that's very true. But in Utah, we do draw for sportsman tags. And whoever is fortunate enough to draw a sportsman tag can still go hunt the same dates as a conservation tag hunter. And so there's pluses on one side, and I guess there's some minuses on the other side. But right now, at least in my opinion, until someone changes my mind, the pluses on the positive side outweigh the minuses. And what you said earlier is very true. If there's transparency and people can see where that money is going and how it's benefiting those big game herds, then I think they, instead of complaining, they should take a closer look at supporting that. But there's always two sides to every issue, and there always will be.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Well, Randy, I really appreciate you spending time with us here today. And I want to give you a chance to let the listeners, come find you, come talk to you. So would you let them know where they can reach you, where they can see your content, and just appreciate the ambassador that you are for our sport and our heritage and our traditions. And it's just, like I said, it's always makes me smile to get an email from you, getting a recap of some hunt or another. And I just appreciate you on more levels than you would know. So please give our listeners a way. I assume it's highdesertwildsheepguides.com, but I'll let you take it from there.
That is my website, and on that website there is a link where if you want to be added to my personal hunters listserv, you could send me your email, and I'd be glad to put you on there. If you want to contact me personally and talk to me on the phone, you can call me at 435-590-8139, and I always return calls or texts. Sometimes I'm out in the far reaches where I don't have any cell coverage, but I do get back to people. I'm not someone who doesn't return a call or return a text.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thanks so much. Yeah, I'm anxious to watch your photos on Instagram. I know you're going to be out hiking and doing your thing here as we get into summer here. So until I see you next time, buddy, God bless, and thanks for spending time here with us.
Thank you. Have a great evening. Bye.
Okay, bye.